Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we talk about an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name's Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris. I am a comedian, a filmmaker, and a luchador.
It's not at all true.
You wouldn't know.
I suppose that's a good point. You put on the mask and it's like, the mask, hey! Wow, for the second time in a row, we've got some relevance here with Jason's designation for himself.
Admittedly, this time I did it on purpose, but last time I did not.
No. So as implied in this episode, this is our season finale for the year 1994, and it is our audience choice episode. So we offered 3 choices to some of our social media friends. And because this was such a huge year for Jim Carrey, we decided to do a Jim Carrey matchup between Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask. And The Mask came out on top, which I was really surprised by.
I was surprised too. It won by 2 votes
out of
300,000 votes altogether. Yeah. But they were all separated pretty close. It was pretty close.
Yeah. And I will say, on a personal level, this was the movie that I wanted to win because I do not like those other 2 movies, especially Dumb and Dumber.
I wanted Dumb and Dumber to win because I do like it. And now knowing how much you dislike it, I wanted it even more.
But instead, we're talking about The Mask, which was actually the most critically and commercially successful movie, Jim Carrey movie of 1994, even though it's probably the one that's been the most forgotten.
Yeah, that's crazy. You would not think of that at all.
No, but it did bring in $119 million in North America and $350 million worldwide. It was the 4th highest grossing movie of 1994, which is amazing to me. It made a lot of money.
Well, you got to consider, right? What's amazing is that he came out of nowhere and just torpedoed the box office with his films where he just took out everything in its wake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't entirely come out of nowhere. He was on In Living Color, which was a very popular TV show at the time.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have thought he was you wouldn't say say Chris Redd, who's on SNL and does a good job, is going to come out and knock out 3 comedy classics, cult classics. No offense to Chris Redd, this could be anybody. It's like no one's going to come out and have that year again where they own the box office for a year.
Although, I mean,
out of nowhere,
you could compare it to not Chris Redd, but more like Adam Sandler coming out of Saturday Night Live. And I don't know if he had all of those in his single year, but he came right from Saturday Night Live and had hit after hit right away.
Yeah, but again, 3 in a year is a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, it definitely.
And very different types of movies, those 3, or different characters.
Right. They're very different characters. And they are different types of movies. This one is the one that most feels like something where he was hired to play a part that could have been played by someone else. And especially Ace Ventura, I believe, is a character that he invented. And even in Dumb and Dumber, I feel like it's so much about the Jim Carrey-ness of it that you can't imagine anyone else playing that part. But here, I think you could have cast someone else in this role. But yeah, Jim Carrey did. I don't know about you, but I was a big fan of In Living Color and of his characters. Do you remember Fire Marshal Bill?
Of course. Yeah, I liked In Living Color a lot. So,
yeah.
I think was maybe my least favorite of his characters.
Yeah. Who else did you like? Let me show you something you didn't like. Fire Marshal Bill?
No, I didn't. I did not love Fire Marshal Bill. But he was always just versatile and as you see in this film, so physically able.
Right. Yeah. So I think it wasn't maybe entirely a surprise, but maybe if you watch In Living Color, you would have thought Damon Wayans or somebody would have been.
They tried with Damon Wayans.
Yeah. They did. Was it Blank Man? Was that his movie?
Blank Man with him and David Alan Grier. Last Boy Scout with him and Adam Sandler. Right?
Yeah.
So he had a few movies. Mo Money.
Mo Money. Yes.
That might have been the first one.
Yeah. So maybe Jim Carrey wasn't the most obvious choice for a huge breakout from In Living Color, but he was certainly a big part of it. And this movie, not only did it make a bunch of money, it was nominated for an Oscar. For best visual effects, not for, the story or anything.
Yeah, the visual effects, did you think they were better or worse than Forrest Gump?
I mean, it lost to Forrest Gump at the Oscars, and I think that was probably the right move because the way it's just so different. What Forrest Gump does is an innovation, and this movie uses visual effects in a more traditional way, although it's very well done, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cartoon come to life, right?
Right.
So that's what all the visual effects are representing, kind of a comic or a cartoon come to life.
Yeah, and I liked it, and I thought they held up, maybe because they're in a way less ambitious than the effects in Forrest Gump. They don't look as dated now as those do.
I disagree. I think they do, especially at the end when the dog has the mask on.
Yeah.
So
it's a little
spoiler alert, 25 years later.
Yes. They don't look perfect now, but I thought they held up decently well. Jim Carrey also was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actor, Musical or Comedy, which I think more reflects the weirdness of what gets nominated for Golden Globes.
I think no. See, I'm going to disagree with you there. Because other than Robin Williams, maybe, who could have brought that much life and physicality and just, I mean, look, this is a big character, but it has to be that big of a character. Who else could have played it?
Right. No, I mean, I think he does a very good job. I just don't know if he's necessarily one of the top actors of the year in a musical or comedy.
You have such prejudice
against Jim Carrey,
comedies and musicals, and I'm glad it's coming out for all of our listeners.
Yeah, I'm showing my true colors here. But a lot of people were conflicted. Jim Carrey, in addition to his Golden Globe nomination, was nominated for a Razzie for Worst New Star, which, to be fair, is encompassing all of the movies that he made this year.
Again, the Razzies, get with it, guys.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I think we talked about the Razzies in a couple other episodes, and they're a little misguided.
And I think, Jim Carrey later on will go on to have many Razzie-worthy films under his belt.
Indeed. This is certainly far from the worst thing that Jim Carrey has done.
So let's give him a break, man.
Yeah. And this movie was relatively well reviewed. It got 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. Roger Ebert said, "The Mask is a perfect vehicle for the talents of Jim Carrey, who underwhelmed me with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, but here seems to have found a story and character that work together with manic energy." He also said, "Cameron Diaz is a true discovery in the film, a genuine sex bomb with a gorgeous face, a wonderful smile, and a gift for comic timing. This is her first movie role after a brief modeling career. It will not be her last. Her chemistry with the Carrey character holds together a plot that is every bit as derivative as it can be, and when she dances with the mask, the result is one of those scenes when movie magic really works."
Yeah, I agree that the dance is iconic and everything. But, and I agree she turned out to be a very good comic actress, but I don't think this role showed that she would be a very good comic actress. She's kind of just there as love interest A.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
There's nothing funny that she has to offer. And that has less to do with her and more to do with the part that was written.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is a movie where pretty much everything funny is from Jim Carrey, and everyone else in this movie is just reacting to him.
Exactly.
But she does make a huge impact in this movie. And I think she's become so famous since then that we forget how striking it was to see her in this for the first time.
Yeah. And as opposed to other leading women that you see for the first time, this was an impact, like you're saying, where it's whoa, that she is beautiful. She is talented. She's going to be a big star.
Yeah, I think so. And I think even at the time watching this movie, you thought this is somebody who's going to really do something. So we keep quoting Roger Ebert, but I figured I might as well quote Gene Siskel too. So in the Chicago Tribune, Gene Siskel said, "The plot is a standard issue destroy the bank robbers affair, but along the way, director Charles Russell stops for some genuinely amusing sequences, including one when Carrey's plucky dog dons the mask, as we mentioned. The Mask is significant only because it's the latest example of technique overriding the written word in an American film, and it's done so well that you can count on a sequel." So he was clearly conflicted about whether he liked this or not.
He was right about the sequel, though.
Yeah, we could talk about that later. And in a slightly more critical vein, and this is interesting because both Siskel and Ebert basically say they didn't like Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura, but they think this is a better movie for him. And Janet Maslin in the New York Times has the opposite opinion. She liked Ace Ventura and compares this unfavorably. She says, now primed for broader success in vehicles better tailored to his talents, Mr. Carrey returns in The Mask, an astonishingly lazy and perfunctory effort that does little to realize his comic potential. The Mask goes absolutely dead when not following its hero's insane outbursts. And since Mr. Carrey remains an actor who can even shut a drawer with comic panache, that kind of dreariness is all the more wasteful. Bright-eyed, crazily intense, irrepressibly silly, Mr. Carrey can be funny without fireworks. He deserves material clever enough to let him do just that. So she thought this was a waste of his talents.
I would say, one, how many scenes is he not in this movie?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, and any of the scenes that he's not in are just those kind of exposition, the bad guys
along.
talking about what they need to do kind of thing.
Yeah. And two, I disagree as far as, I mean, he showed off a lot of comic ability and a lot of different talents and styles and skills as a comedic actor in this thing.
Yeah. And I think the good thing about this movie is that it does allow him to do something different than he did in those other two movies. And those are very lowbrow, especially Dumb and Dumber. And not that this movie is highbrow, but it's maybe a little more witty and clever.
More mainstream
is
what I'll call it. It's not more witty, dude. Come on.
Okay.
Get over this.
Did you see this movie in 1994?
I did. I think I probably saw all three. Or maybe I didn't see Ace Ventura in the theater, but that was so quick to video. I almost had it memorized and whatnot. I did see this one in the theater. This was a summer movie, right? If I remember.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but that sounds right.
So it was fun watching it again and seeing certain things. The Cuban Pete number, I remember. So yeah, I liked it then. And I liked it now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I saw it then. I don't know if I saw it in the theater or if I saw it on home video later, but I did. I mean, I was a big fan of his from In Living Color. And I think I liked those movies more then than I do now. I mean, I've watched Dumb and Dumber again, at least when the sequel came out a few years ago. And I think I have a lot lower tolerance for that kind of humor maybe than I used to. But even in 94, this might have been the one that I liked the most out of all three of those.
Well, if you had voted back in 1994, then you would have voted for this one.
I think I might have, and I definitely voted for it now. So that's a little about the history of The Mask, and we'll come back and talk about our general thoughts on the movie. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In our season finale of our 1994 season, we're talking about our audience choice winner, Jim Carrey in The Mask, which beat out a couple other Jim Carrey movies, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber. And as I was saying multiple times, I was glad this movie won because I actually like it.
I wouldn't have chosen this one, but I was glad it won because this has been the one that I hadn't seen in the longest amount of time. Maybe since the theater even. Who knows? Yeah,
I might have too. And I think as we were looking at the votes, I was thinking, I hope this wins. But then when it did and I had to sit down and watch it again, I wondered, will I actually like it? Is this actually the one that I would have enjoyed the most? And I think so.
And how did it get lost over time is what I'm wondering. Because like you said, it made $351 million. It was the fourth biggest movie of the year. It was one of the three breakout films of, Jim Carrey's breakout year. And do you think it's because he made sequels in the other ones, or what is the reason here?
Yeah, well, I mean, Dumb and Dumber didn't get a sequel until many, many, many years later. He did do Ace Ventura 2 fairly soon after the first one, I believe.
Right.
I think the other two appealed directly to his fan base, whereas this one tried to be a little bit more of a mainstream reaching movie. And I think maybe sometimes, you don't get that long lasting appeal when you're not like really just speaking directly to the people who already are, on your side.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's true, is that as his career went on, he made movies that were Jim Carrey movies first. Mm-hmm. And this movie became more of an outlier. But yeah, I think it's a fun movie. I mean, as mentioned in all of those reviews that we quoted, it doesn't have a really interesting story. I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. These broad bad guy characters who want to rob a bank for reasons that, I mean, they want money.
Because they're bad guys.
Because they're bad guys, right? That's the only reason that they want to do it. And they run this nightclub where Cameron Diaz's character is a singer. I mean, it's all very broadly drawn. Jim Carrey's sort of put upon bank teller character, Stanley Ipkiss, and his buddy played by Riegert Jeni.
I was happy to see Riegert Jeni, and also sad because Riegert Jeni was a brilliant stand-up comedian and a very capable, best friend type in the movies. And
right.
He committed suicide, and it was sad, man, because he was such a talent and everything.
Yeah.
If he wasn't talented, who cares?
Right?
But he was. He was talented.
Yeah, and I think the 90s were a time when you would cast Riegert Jeni as your main character's best friend. That was kind of a go-to thing there.
Yeah, that was, and he did great at it.
Yeah.
He did fine in it.
Yeah, he's fine in it. But yeah, I mean, everything, I do think that everything outside of Jim Carrey's performance and the way that they use the special effects here as Stanley gets this mask and turns into this crazy over-the-top cartoon character, everything else is sort of underwhelming.
Well, the one thing I would say that stands out is Ben Stein as the Dr. Arthur Newman. He just plays Ben Stein, as he always does.
Yeah, so does that really stand out?
Yeah, because it's so tonally different than the rest of the film, and he actually gives a explanation of what the mask might be, whether it's like a descendant of Loki or whatnot. But I thought, everything is so ratcheted up. It was nice to see Ben Stein talk like this,
Yes.
So.
And Ben Stein and that character, the only thing that returned in the sequel, Son of the Mask.
That is true. And I will not watch that.
Yeah, no, neither will I. But yeah, I thought this movie was a lot of fun, and it gives Jim Carrey the opportunity. Not only he uses his physicality, as we talked about, the sort of slapstick and the rubber faced nature and his contortions, but he also does a lot of fun impressions in this movie. I think my favorite bit is when he's over dramatically pretending to die, and he does all the different movie deaths,
the westerns.
Yeah. And he does Gone with the Wind, and some impressions, stuff that probably a teenager seeing this movie would not have known.
But it's well built, because the first sequence you see when he's the mask is like, again, a gang of street thugs. And they try to rob him, and he takes them to a back alley, and it's like a carnival of Jim Carrey craziness. And of course, to me, my favorite one is the Cuban Pete sequence, where the cops, the SWAT team, the entire force finally tracks him down, and they're going to get him. And the way he escapes is by singing a rumba or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Something like that, with his maracas and the puffy shirt,
right,
and all of it. And he gets, he sort of has it's unclear what exactly the mask's powers are, but he has a sort of mesmerizing effect on those cops. It reminded me of Beetlejuice when he makes all the characters dance to Deo.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And there's a lot of Tim Burton-y elements to this movie, I think we could say.
Well, I think it was, in your episode, the Josh's Pick episode.
Yes.
Where you talked about, when we were talking about New Nightmare, you had mentioned that Dream Warriors was your favorite of the...
Well, it's not my favorite. It's considered a favorite of a lot of people.
When you had mentioned that it was considered a favorite of a lot of people, this is the director of Dream Warriors.
Yes, Chuck Russell or Charles Russell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, also the director of the Blob remake, I think, is probably the other movie he's most known for.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's based on a comic. They totally switched around who the comic is and what he does. And they, again, made it this lively cartoon come to life. And everything from the wardrobe to the facial expressions to the performance match what they were going for. And I just don't see this movie working with too many other actors.
Right. No, I agree. I think when I said this feels like a movie more so than the others where it existed outside of Jim Carrey and they hired him to do it, I think that is true. And obviously it's based, like you said, it's based on a comic book. It was a character that already existed. It was a movie that was going to get made anyway. But I think having Jim Carrey in the role is what makes the movie work. That if they had made this movie and hired someone else, it probably wouldn't have been the same.
And as you had mentioned, Cameron Diaz does kind of smolder off the screen. Did you read about any of the other casting choices?
I didn't, but as we learned in our Forrest Gump episode, you like to alternatively cast movies.
It's fun to think about because
Yes.
you're going to get a different movie if you pair. So Vanessa Williams.
Oh, as the Cameron Diaz character? Yeah.
She I think could have pulled it off because we know she sings, and I think Cameron Diaz probably lip synced.
I don't know for sure, but I imagine, yeah.
Yeah. Christy Swanson, very popular in the 90s.
That would have been a terrible choice.
And my favorite pick, Anna Nicole Smith, was considered for this role.
And she, speaking of, we talked about the Razzies earlier, and when we were talking about some other film, I think Anna Nicole Smith won a Razzie in 1994 for something.
Was it a Naked Gun movie that she was
It
in?
might have been a Naked Gun movie.
33 1/3.
Yeah. And she beat out some other performer that we were talking about in a previous episode. So imagine if she had been in both that movie and The Mask. It could have been quite a Razzie year.
Do you have a favorite Anna Nicole Smith movie?
Wasn't it? What was it?
Skyscraper,
Skyscraper? Yes. As we can talk about Skyscraper yet again.
That might be, a bonus episode for
for some other year. It's not 94, right? It was a different year.
I don't know when it came out. Dave, Skyscraper.
We've already asked Dave to look up Skyscraper. Yeah. But no, Cameron Diaz, clearly the best choice. Not only Jim Carrey, but she makes it work a lot. She is not only incredibly sexy, but just charismatic and really draws your attention.
She brings you in. She becomes the focus, which you need against someone as big as Jim Carrey.
Yes, yeah, and she holds her own, and which is impressive because at the time, of course, she was not a big star.
Was,
yeah, and she was very young, and you can see that she's gonna. I feel like maybe even have a more consistent career than Jim Carrey did.
I don't know, man. I would rather marry Lauren Holly than the dude from Fall Out Boy.
That is an interesting, and he's from Good Charlotte, not Fall Out Boy.
Well, I stand by my statement.
Yeah.
Oh, a Madden brother? Like that's any better?
Right, right. But yeah, I mean, you're of course right about. Were there alternate castings for the Jim Carrey character?
I don't think there was. Not that I read about. But I mean, literally, Robin Williams was the only name I could think about.
Yeah. I mean,
Martin Short, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, Robin Williams in a way does a similar performance as the genie in Aladdin, which I think was a couple of years earlier.
Steve Martin could have done it, I guess.
Maybe that would have been a very different. Steve Martin is a little more droll, a little more dry. It would have been a different kind of role. But it was adapted from a comic book that is much darker and more serious. And maybe if they had cast a different actor, they could have gone in that route.
But I mean, even the way that the mask makeup looks is cartoonish to the point of it wouldn't have worked if it was a darker film based on the tone they went for. They really nailed that tone.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't know if that a darker version of this would have been the way to go. And that makeup looks great. And like we were saying about the special effects, I think even though you can see that they're not perfect, I feel like the style of them holds up really well. It's obviously really influenced by Tex Avery and old Looney Tunes cartoons and stuff, which you see Stanley Ipkiss watching on his TV. And I think because it's stylized and because it's referencing cartoons, it doesn't have to look perfectly realistic for it to be good.
Did you go around after seeing this saying smoking?
Yeah, talk about catchphrases like we talked about with Forrest Gump. Yeah, that and what is it? Somebody stop me. Yeah. I think those were the big catchphrases from this movie.
The one I liked the best was after he swallowed the gun or the bomb, I don't remember when, and it explodes in him and he goes, "That's a spicy meatball." That one I remember. Baby.
Yes, because he had just watched Cemetery Man.
There you go. It all comes together.
Yes. This movie, I think maybe not as much as those other two Carrey movies, but it did have a couple catchphrases that people remember. If you were doing like a Jim Carrey impression, you might mention those two.
Yeah, and who doesn't want to hear that?
Right. Well, I think that is maybe something that people remembered from this movie more so than others. We talked a lot about Cameron Diaz, and she's great, but I also liked that his other love interest, played by Amy Yasbeck,
You son of a bitch, Amy Yasbeck.
yeah, and in a way, I mean, he ends up getting together with Cameron Diaz by the end, but there's a stretch of this movie where he's totally in love with these two women who are both working for the bad guys, which I kind of liked, that he's this dupe who is just strung along by these women who are using him.
Yeah, there's a quote from him where he based the character on his dad as a nice guy just trying to get by. And you could see like any attention, is good attention for him because he gets walked on by literally or figuratively everyone in the movie,
Yeah.
Richard Jeni wants him to go to the club. He says, you be here. They like leave him behind. What happened to you? Like, really? You wouldn't go back and check on your friend at some point during the night?
Yeah. Richard Jeni, not really a good friend in this movie.
No, but that's probably what his character should be.
Right.
So
you know who is a good friend?
The dog.
Milo the dog. Yeah. He did a lot. I thought good performance from Milo the dog in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he put the mask on, that was one of the highlights.
That was cool. The way they built to that third act where, so Carrey has the mask most of the time and then the bad guy has it. Just becomes like a steroided out monster. Or
he doesn't exaggerate as much as Carrey does.
But then you get to that third act and you're like, how are they going to save the day? And that whole sequence came together really well, I thought, where Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz and Milo the dog had to work together.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the plot is very rudimentary. It's not complicated and it's kind of cliched, but it works for what they're trying to do here. It's just a framework to hang Jim Carrey's crazy performance and the special effects and all of that. I kind of was hoping Cameron Diaz would put the mask on.
I agree. I thought that might have happened too in that third act when the mask goes up for grabs and everything. So.
Yeah. But no, she didn't get
that would have been cool because her wardrobe is, it's very like you said, nightclub singer, very, sultry.
Yeah.
And so that would have been interesting to see what they do with the wardrobe for that and everything.
Yeah.
Among everything else.
Yeah. It would have been a fun thing, but no. And that nightclub, man, I don't believe any nightclub in 1994 looked like that or would have existed with that focus, the Coco Bongo Club, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I had written down that there was the remake of Minnie the Moocher,
Yeah.
Heidi, 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 ho, which is a great Cab Calloway song, which he sings in the Blues Brothers, and a classic from probably the 30s or 40s.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm looking at Dave to look at it.
Yeah. Well, right. All the music in this movie is throwback style.
Yeah. And this is like that New Jack Swing mid-90s stuff. And this one was by K7.
Oh.
Who you remember?
I don't.
Come, baby, baby, come. So, you gotta give me loving and you gotta give me some. That was
bad.
That was not a good.
Yeah, but I felt like more than that, like R&B, this movie is right in the moment of like the swing revival. Like the Cherry Poppin' Daddies should be in this movie.
Weren't they? Well, who was the swing band in this movie?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it was right before the swing revival.
Okay, maybe it anticipated the swing revival.
I think you're right because in '96 was Swingers, which really to me kicked it off.
Yeah.
So, Dave, what facts you got for us?
It was the Royal Crown Review.
All
there
right.
you go. That was definitely one of the big bands of that swing revival.
Nice.
Maybe not as big as the Cherry Poppin' Daddies.
And what year is
Skyscraper?
31. Oh, no.
1931 is
Cab Calloway. Yeah.
And Skyscraper is 96.
All right. Yeah.
Awesome movie year 96.
Knocking them all down.
Yes. Thank you, Dave, for all of that. But yeah, I mean, weirdly, I feel like the music in the movie, maybe at the time it came out, might have seemed like it was trendy, but now it makes the movie more timeless and less trapped in the 90s.
Oh, I disagree completely.
Yeah.
It feels so time-stamped, that movie. Like you could never hear it except anywhere in the 90s where there was like a lot of like, hey, what if we revive this genre?
Right. But I mean, because it's a genre that is being revived, it's something that is now, I mean, it's as much the 30s and the 40s as it is the 90s. And, if you saw it in a movie now, it would be a throwback. So
to the 90s
or to the 30s and 40s.
Depending on how well it was executed, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I don't know. You mentioned that Cuban Pete as one of the highlights of the movie, and I think it is. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. What any other aspects that you particularly liked about this movie?
No.
No?
I think we covered most of it on this one already.
Yeah. It's a fun movie, though. Do we want to rate it out of maracas? I don't know.
5 maracas?
Yeah.
Because of the Cuban Pete sequence?
I don't know. I was going to say masks, but that's pretty uncreative. Yeah.
5 maracas, 3 maracas for me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I would give it 3 out of 5. It's not a great movie, and it doesn't necessarily surprise me that it's faded a bit from memory, but it was a fun thing to watch.
I do think it was, but what's interesting to me is that it, of the 3, that this is the one that is lost to time and was the biggest hit.
Right. But obviously from our small poll sample, it's one that some people are interested in hearing about.
But part of the reason people were commenting was because of that. They're like, the one that we think people know the least or that we haven't spoken about in the longest time was The Mask.
Right. I
mean, it was tough to go through 300,000 votes, but
you did it by hand.
We love
every single one of them. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll come back and talk a little more about the legacy of The Mask. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In our season finale for the 1994 season, we are talking about our audience choice winner, the Jim Carrey vehicle, The Mask, which beat out a couple other Jim Carrey movies, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber as the choice of our listeners. And
good thing Simon Birch wasn't on that list. Watch out.
What the? Is that a movie?
You don't remember Simon Birch?
Is that a Jim Carrey movie?
He played like adult Simon Birch. You remember that?
No, I remember the movie. I don't really remember.
Is that from 1994?
No, not at all. I was just trying to think of the worst, most obscure. You don't remember Simon Birch?
I don't think I do.
He's a little boy and he's like kind of physically hampered and like his friends got to protect him. I bet it was 2001 or 2000.
Man.
And then, he almost
98.
98.
Oh, okay.
I was close.
Yeah.
He almost dies like a bunch, and then his friend helps him, and now he's an adult Simon Birch.
And he's played by Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey plays adult Simon Birch. Double check me on that, Dave.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of bad Jim Carrey movies.
What's your least favorite?
The number 23. Have you seen that?
No.
Do not
but
see
I saw
that.
Simon Birch.
You did.
So.
Was it good, Simon Birch?
It's you would hate it because it's very sentimental.
Yeah.
And, you don't like that stuff.
No, I don't
didn't
usually.
dislike it at the
Wow,
time.
he was in that. I don't remember him being in that. Wow.
Yeah, the number 23 is very, very bad. And is I think Jim Carrey can be a good dramatic actor. I mean, The Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine, which is one of my favorite movies, just straight up of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
But when Jim Carrey takes himself too seriously, you get something like the number 23.
What was a good Jim Carrey movie? The Majestic. That was an underrated one.
I haven't seen that actually.
Oh yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, he's had a weird up and down career over time. I think he did some movie a year or two ago where he played like a Polish detective solving a murder or something.
I'd like to see that.
So I can't remember what that movie is called, but I did not see it. But again, weird, dark things that he does.
And that's cool. And I guess if you're going to say the legacy of this film, he made tons and tons of money off of all these comedies. So he was able to play weird Polish detectives.
Right. And I mean, but before he played weird Polish detectives, he made a lot of crowd pleasing comedies.
Yeah. And some good ones. Liar, Liar's a good film.
Yeah.
And
Liar, Liar.
Bruce Almighty, maybe. That
was all right. Yeah. Yes Man.
That was fun.
It was all right. Yeah.
The movie is called Dark Crimes, and it looks really dark.
Yeah,
based on the poster.
And crimes.
It got
He's
really
scowling on the poster.
Really bad reviews.
Yeah.
I did not see it.
Yeah, he made a lot of bad movies, but he made some cool movies too.
Yeah, and he's become a sort of pop culture personality. He's a bit of an odd guy.
Yeah.
He paints. Apparently,
he lives on like a different plane.
Yes,
right?
yes,
I mean,
he does.
maybe Tom Shadyac, the director of Ace Ventura, right there.
Oh, right, yeah,
on their spiritual horizon, and
they're
kicking our asses in it.
I will say, even though there are some very bad Jim Carrey movies, if he's in a movie, I'm intrigued, to see what he's going to do, because he's going to do something weird.
There was a time in the 2000s where I would watch every single award show if he was going to be on, because he was always so fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Yeah, he did. I remember the MTV Awards where he came out like he was in Dazed and Confused.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
that was
great.
That was fun. As far as the legacy, we already mentioned the fantastic sequel, Son of the Mask.
Right. Yes.
Is that what Jamie Kennedy?
Jamie Kennedy, yes, who hates me. Yeah.
Go see the movie Heckler and you'll understand.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think that came about because Jim Carrey refused to do a direct sequel.
Well, that's good. I think that was
yeah. Although it sort of surprises me because he did do the Ace Ventura sequel right away.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe like you said, those characters were more personal and this one was more kind of taking on something else. So maybe he wanted to revisit those personal characters.
Yeah, maybe. But I feel like he could have made a bunch more money just doing this again.
Yeah, but maybe he wasn't after that. Josh.
Yeah,
There's more to life than money, Josh.
That I suppose.
So he also, there was also the Masked animated series and a Super Nintendo game.
Oh, Super Nintendo.
And you talk about the sequel. I remember reading about it.
Yeah, no, we for the record, we have neither of us seen this movie.
No, but
if you're listening, Jamie Kennedy, we did not see it.
I have a recollection of the Super Nintendo game of it just saying "Somebody stop me" over and over and over again.
There was a contest through Nintendo Power magazine. And if you won it, you were going to be on the sequel, like as an extra for the Mask. So there was a lot of talk of the sequel.
Right. It was supposed to happen. And then it did not.
So the winner was nobody.
It was no. The winner was us for not having to watch the substandard movie that they would have made. Yeah. I mean, and of course, beyond Jim Carrey becoming a huge star, Cameron Diaz also became a huge star after this movie.
Yeah. This launched her to, she really ascended very quickly after this. It was like this and then all leading female roles, I think.
Yeah,
right?
and There's Something About Mary was what, a couple years after this? Yeah.
98.
I think 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, she's retired. I don't think she's made a movie in like 5 years, but for a while she had an interesting career and she took a lot of chances. And I mean, in a way, like Jim Carrey, that she was pigeonholed as sort of like the funny hot girl, and yet she would go do these weird independent films or dramatic roles and really try to reach and not always succeed.
I don't know other than like Bad Teacher, where she kind of like went out there and like was a real son of a bitch of a character. Do you have any others where you thought they worked out really well?
Being John Malkovich, maybe?
Oh, Malkovich for sure. And also Any Given Sunday. She's very good at Any Given Sunday.
And even something like The Counselor, which I can't stand, is a terrible movie, but is a movie where she is like giving it everything that she can.
Well, and the story with that is they had to redub
it, right? Because she used some weird accent that they decided not to use. But you can't say that she's not stretching or trying to do something in that movie.
You see the success of what is Dead to Me, right? With Christina.
Yeah.
Christina Aguilera.
No, Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And you think like, man, Cameron Diaz is such a star and has this kind of offbeat sense of humor. She could totally knock out something for Netflix that would be really unique. And I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that she's decided not to act anymore, because I think there's a lot more that she could still do.
Yeah, but Good Charlotte, they're still a band, because thank goodness for that.
You're really anti Madden Brothers here on this episode.
I don't like them, I'll tell you that much. What do they sing? Dance? Was that one?
No, that's Fall Out Boy again.
Fall Out Boy, man.
What a good Lifestyles of the Rich.
Yeah, that was probably their biggest hit. Yeah. No, I agree. Good Charlotte suck, but not any more than some bad Jim Carrey movies.
Yeah.
So what else legacy wise? Comic book movies. This was kind of ahead of its time in adapting this indie comic that, wasn't a huge superhero property.
Yeah, I agree. And also kind of fitting the film towards the needs of the film as opposed to the comic book.
Right. Yeah. They changed a lot about the source material. But now I feel like almost any kind of comic book, regardless of whether it's a big superhero or not, is being angled toward getting a movie or TV adaptation.
I mean, you could totally see a reboot of this more than Ace Ventura or Dumb and Dumber, even though
the prequel to Dumb and Dumber. Yeah.
Like today, who would you have star as the Mask?
Oh my God, I don't know.
You know what my first thought was? Kevin Hart.
Yeah,
I don't know that I'd like it, but
I think he's too old.
He is a little too old, but I could absolutely see that happening. Yeah. He's the kind of person that they would cast.
I was thinking Pete Davidson.
Yeah, Pete Davidson is he's in the same place in his career that Jim Carrey was when he made this movie. Yeah. But would that be good? Pete Davidson as the Mask?
Would anything?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I think Pete Davidson is in that career point, but he's too low key as a performer.
Right. Maybe, if the Mask was a pothead or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's another good point though. Does that style even exist anymore? This kind of high concept, over the top,
Yeah.
As far as mainstream comedies, it doesn't right now.
Right. Yeah, maybe not. But there was definitely a series of special effects driven comedies. I mean, that was a thing that I think went for a period of time.
Right. But I think this is a high concept film that becomes even bigger because of Jim Carrey's physical abilities. And also, like you said, all the different variations he inhabits with the voices and whatnot. So like who is that person, or is that even a thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would be, I guess, probably someone from like Saturday Night Live or something like that, or maybe some like YouTube star or something.
Maybe we're looking at it all wrong, and it's got to be like Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah, but again, I think Melissa McCarthy is maybe a little too established.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think you could definitely find someone currently who's doing somewhat under the radar or alternative-ish comedy who could break out with a movie like this. But do we really want to remake The Mask anyway?
No, we don't. So we're not going to greenlight it.
Yeah, never mind.
But I do
remake of The Mask.
But the idea of high concept comedies, I do think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future, because as we see this summer, the box office has not been kind to comedies, and the grounded kind of Apatow stuff, which we all like very much, is becoming more and more like, hey, we could just watch that at home on Netflix.
Right.
So as you go to the theater more, you're going to need more of these high concept
a big
things,
spectacle thing.
which I think, we're going to see a lot of comedies like that.
Yeah, maybe so. Although also this summer, Men in Black International, which is that kind of mixing of big special effects stuff and comedy, was a total failure.
Yeah, again, I don't think people consider that a comedy.
No, they don't, which was part of the problem with that movie. But that's another podcast entirely.
Let's plug that one.
The only other thing that doesn't exist, the only other thing that I had on the legacy we already talked about, which is the Swing revival.
Yeah.
I watching this movie, I was like, I did not remember how swing oriented this movie was.
I really feel like 96 with Swingers was where, because this was mainstream and that was kind of more underground,
Yeah.
So that kind of took it off. And then you had, like we said, the Real Big Fish. That was more ska,
that's
right?
Ska, yeah.
But they were so interconnected, the swing and the ska.
They had horns. They all had horns.
Cherry Pop and Daddy.
Squirrel Nut Zippers.
Yeah.
They were a big part of it. And the Royal Crown Review, who were in this movie.
Yeah.
Big Bad Voodoo Daddy.
That was the other big one. They were in Swingers.
Yeah. So yeah, I think The Mask is belongs with all that stuff too. So
smoking.
Yes. Do you have other legacy thoughts on The Mask? No. All right. Well, that is The Mask. Thanks to everybody who voted for it.
And who voted for the other.
Yeah, we appreciate all the feedback that we get. We'll do another audience choice in our next season. And so that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year and the end of 1994. Check us out on social media. Where are we at?
We're still at awesomemovieyear.com. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. Jason Harris Comedy on Facebook and Instagram. Jay Harris Comedy on Twitter. And go for jason.com on internet web searches.
The World Wide Web.
Yeah.
You can find me there at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and at Signal Bleed on Twitter. And our awesome producer, David Rosen, has the Piecing It Together podcast,
which you can find wherever you're listening to this podcast. And also you can find us on Twitter at Piecing Pod, Facebook, Piecing It Together podcast, and check out our Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces Facebook group.
And next, although this is our season finale, we're going to have a slight short epilogue coming up next.
Yeah, we're going to do a little wrap up, talk about some of the films we might have left out. There were more than 12 movies that came out in 1994. So
interesting, obscure fact about 1994.
I'm full of them.
Up to 20 movies were released that year.
So, and possibly more.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do a little season wrap up, a little exit interview, if you will.
Yeah.
So we'll do that next week. That'll be a fun little thing to do.
Yeah, a little palate cleanser. So check that out next.
And maybe next week, should we reveal what year we're going to do for season 2?
I think we'll do that in our next episode. So something to string our listeners along.
Ooh,
get them to listen next time. please do tune in for that. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.